A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
Star Wars: Ghosts of the Sith, a Last of the Jedi tale, by Jude Watson, 2006. Set in 19 BBY and appearing in Star Wars Insider number 88, this Last of the Jedi tale takes place between the novels Dark Warning and Underworld, as Ferris Olan is confronted by the dark side. Created and read by the Archivist Publishing. Jedi Padawan Ferris Olan had been well respected for his dedication to the Jedi Order. In fact, he had often clashed with friend and fellow Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, who disagreed with his strict adherence to Jedi rules and protocol. Along with their masters, the two had often worked together on missions, many of which inevitably led to heated ideological clashes between the two teenage Padawans. In the end, it had been his strict adherence to Jedi rules that ultimately led to Ferris's resignation from the Jedi Order, following the accidental death of a fellow Padawan and the feelings of guilt he harbored regarding this tragedy. Following the execution of Order 66 and the initiation of the Emperor's Great Jedi Purge, Ferris became a fugitive along with all other Force-sensitive beings across the galaxy. His life on the run would have inevitably ended in tragedy, had he not had a serendipitous encounter with Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. Together, the two fugitives had successfully eluded the clutches of bounty hunters and the Imperial Inquisitorius in an attempt to flee across the galaxy, only to be cornered on Balassa in a futile attempt to save the planet from the Empire. Now, Obi-Wan is gone. Ferris, accompanied only by the headstrong boy Trevor, has escaped the planet in a bid to evade Imperial pursuit. The Star Cruiser lurched as Ferris Olan yanked it to starboard. The debris field was studded with jettisoned space garbage and small asteroids that could get sucked into your engine faster than you could say.
Oops,
he said to himself, but he could handle it, if only his hands would stop sweating. Coraban, the seat of power for the ancient Sith Order, lay behind the debris field. A source of evil that still calls evil to meet it, Obi-Wan Kenobi had once said. As Ferris's ship approached its inner atmosphere, he could feel the dark side of the Force rising around him. Ferris had made the choice to come, had entered the coordinates into the nav computer, yet it had felt as though the decisions were being made outside of his own will. It was as though a tractor beam had got a hold of him, yanking him forward.
Why am I doing this? Why?
It made no sense except in his bones. Just days before, Obi-Wan had hiked up a mountaintop on Balassa to track him down. Ferris had been your average run-of-the-mill Clone Wars veteran / resistance fighter / Imperial prison escapee. Then Obi-Wan had shown up, and soon he was dodging bounty hunters and finding himself smack in the middle of civil wars, not to mention finding out that the galaxy was in the hands of the Sith. Now here he was, a Jedi again, and Obi-Wan had toddled off to retire among the Banthas on Tatooine. He wasn't even a Jedi. Not really. He'd been Siri Tachi's apprentice when he'd left the Jedi Order. He could still feel the Force, but accessing it with the same swiftness, the same pureness, was a struggle. He had been on his way to Coruscant from the Outer Rim to check out a rumor about imprisoned Jedi. When the idea had occurred to him to use Coraban for a fuel stop. He never said he'd been a smart Jedi. Something had called him. An urge to test himself, maybe. He needed to see what he was up against. Even a glimpse of the dark side on Coraban would tell him more than Obi-Wan's words ever could. He passed through the debris field, and suddenly Coraban was there, crimson clouds obscuring its surface, 7 moons the color of bleached bone. He'd been here before as an apprentice. He remembered the feeling in his stomach, a kind of too sweet sickness, like rotten fruit, in his mouth. His 13-year-old traveling companion, Trevor Flume, came up behind him.
Spooky. Those clouds.
The color of pain,
Trevor said. Ferris glanced at him. Trevor had seen much in his short life. The Imperials had killed his entire family. If pain could have a color, Trevor would know it. They were cleared to land at Dresde. The spaceport lay in the center of a plateau, just a huddle of ugly buildings under a metallic sky. Ferris eased the ship down to the landing platform, coming in low and easy.
Can we review now? Oh, brave leader!
Trevor asked.
According to you and the One, the Sith are the ultimate bad guys with awesome evil-doing power. And you want to refuel at their own private pit stop?
That about covers it.
Ferris grinned.
We won't stay long.
Trevor raked back his blue hair with one hand.
We've already stayed too long,
He muttered. Outside, an Imperial officer was already waiting.
No access to Dresde. Emergency fueling only. Stay by your ship.
Charming welcome,
Trevor said as the officer walked away. Ferris took in everything without seeming to. An old Jedi technique. The landing platform and hangar had been expanded recently. He could see the new ferrocrete laid in slabs next to the old, done hastily with humps and bumps and already cracked and scorched from the amount of traffic. The hangar was thick with Imperial traffic and battered star cruisers. Grungy pilots leaned against their ships and Imperial officers hurried by importantly. Battle droids were everywhere. He'd thought most of them were out of service now. He felt as though something brushed his shoulder, but there was no one there. Perspiration sprang upon his skin, rolled down between his shoulder blades. The dark side of the Force was so powerful here that it seemed to hang in the air like dank humidity. He remembered that feeling too, and the voices. At first they were so low, you thought it was a breeze, until you noticed there was no breeze. And the words weren't coming from the beings around him, they were inside him, insistent and soft, like damp fingertips caressing him. The ghosts of the Sith were whispering in his ear, picking up his own fears and adding their own dark invitations.
You think you've lost the Force, but we can teach you. You'll be better than before. You've lost everything. We'll get it back for you. We can get you everything back. Everything you had, and everything you want. Just stay and join us.
Ferris, you okay?
Fine.
The voices were bad enough. Now Ferris noticed the peculiar quality of sound in the hangar. Was it the design of the landing strips, the docking bays, or the low overhangs that made voices echo? Whatever it was, it gave the sound a hallucinatory quality. Footsteps you thought were approaching were actually receding. Voices you thought were behind you really came from up ahead. A land speeder you thought would appear around a corner never arrived. So when the voice came from behind him, but she appeared in front of him, he was surprised. The woman surveyed the landing platform with a chilly blue gaze. Then she flung a luxurious Shohain cape around her shoulders and stalked in his direction, followed by a high-ranking Imperial officer. Ferris reached back casually and drew his hood over his head, shadowing his face.
Take me immediately to the Valley of the Dark Lords,
She said to the officer as she passed them.
Genazan Arbor, the most wanted galactic criminal before the Clone Wars. A brilliant scientist who developed cures for diseases that would decimate populations.
That's good.
Then she would introduce the virus into the population, killing thousands before stepping in to save them. In the meantime, she would jack up the price.
That's bad.
You're catching on. She was obsessed with studying the Force. She might be one of the few in the galaxy who knows that Palpatine is a Sith. On my last mission, we tracked her here. She came to meet a Dark Lord. I wonder why she's here.
Not our problem. We're headed to Coruscant, remember?
If we followed her,
We're not supposed to leave the ship. Normally, I don't like obeying orders, but in this case, gladly.
Trevor shivered as he looked over the lip of the platform down at Dreshte.
Stay. We have things to teach you.
He wanted to stay. He could outwit the voices. They would think he was staying for them, for their powers. But he would stay only for his own reasons.
You can become stronger in the Force. This is the place to do it. You know it.
Ferris felt the urge inside, strong as the pull of a gigantic moon. He could learn from them and yet not surrender to the dark side. They were right. He was weak now, and he needed to be strong. He could stay.
Ferris!
Trevor put a hand on his wrist. He looked down and did not see the genial, wounded boy he was fond of. Instead, he saw an obstacle. He stared down at Trevor's hand. He felt the warmth of skin on skin. A touch, one being to another. And in that touch, he felt trust.
I just think...
Trevor said.
that at this point we need to choose our battles.
With an effort, Ferris pushed against the voices. The dark side was here, but so was the Force he knew. He felt it around him and grabbed on. 20 meters ahead, Zan Arbor suddenly turned. He wasn't sure what had prompted her movement. Her blue gaze was intense as she studied him. He didn't move. She said something to the officer next to her.
Oh, we'd better go.
Ferris said. Without any appearance of haste, they turned and jumped into their cruiser. He keyed in the request for clearance and counted off the seconds. It seemed to take years, In that span of time, he realized how close he had come to staying. He had barely fought off that urge. They had found his weakness and exploited it. The light flashed green.
Departure granted.
As he fired the engines, the light began flashing red suddenly, and the screen was blinking with
Contact ground control!
Ignoring the summons, Ferris took off. Yes, he was on his way. This audiobook was developed 100% using artificial intelligence to generate realistic and familiar voices.